Everyone, we're going to start shortly. We're just waiting for the Vice President to settle, and then we'll start. Just give us a few. Yes, Brenda.
Thank you. I've just written down the chat box. There's a lot of wind, so just in case. There's a lot of wind here, so just in case the sounding or the connection goes off, it's just for the wind, so don't worry.
That's fine. Thanks.
I'm now Hello, Jacob, can you hear me? Jacob, can you hear me? Sorry? That I've done already. Are we okay now? Customer. You think we can start? Okay, you indicate to me when we started.
Jeff, what's the problem? We can hear the chief. We can hear the chief. What's the problem?
Oh, we were just managing a few other logistical issues on the side, but we are good to go. Good to go.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So just to note that we are live on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter channels. Please feel free to share on and talking to our young guests today, and then call on everyone to follow us. Honorable Chief Fortune Charumbira, Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable members represented here today, acting clerk of the Pan-African Parliament, senior management of the PAP, dear guests, and our young Africans who join us today. Thank you very much for coming to this lecture, which will be focusing on the role of the Pan-African Parliament, the role of the youth, in achieving the mandate of the Pan-African Parliament. So we are going to, in the first phase, on our Vice President to give us welcoming remarks and officially open this meeting for us. So Honorable Chief Fortune Charombira, you have the floor to officially welcome everyone into this meeting. Thank you very much.
Such a global forum where the youth can work with Pan-African Parliament to improve the conditions under which people live on the continent of Africa and beyond. As mentioned, my name is Chief Fortune Zephaniah Charumbira, Vice President at Pan-African Parliament, who is going to interact with you during this important forum. Can I also use this opportunity to recognize all the honorable members of Parliament from Pan-African Parliament who are attending, who are participating in this meeting. I also would like to make special mention of other facilitators from outside the family of PAP, and within PAP, we do have staff, the acting clerk of Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Gali, and his whole team, and our technical people. My presentation is in two parts. I'm asked to make some opening remarks and at the same time do a presentation. So I'm going to combine the two. Welcoming you to this meeting. I should say the youth globally are a critical, if not the driving
Yes, we can hear you. We just
Jeff, we cannot hear anything. We cannot hear anything. Can you stop the chief until the control room sorts out the voices and sound issues?
Yeah.
It's like you are disconnected. Sometimes you are back. You can't hear me?
I can
Now
hear
you
you
are back.
Now you
You
are
can
back.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm back. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what was missed, because I don't know in my presentation, I don't know what was missed. I went on to talk about, remember, I was saying the Zimbabwe at the moment is amending the constitution to include special seats for the youth in the parliament. I don't know whether that went through. Did you get that message?
No, I didn't get
Hello.
anything from the start. From the start, I didn't get anything.
You got that one?
No, I didn't.
Sorry?
I did not get you.
Not everyone got
go
that
back
part.
a bit where I was saying. Sorry? Sorry?
Not everyone got that part, so you can maybe come back just a bit, and then
Okay, can I repeat? Yes. I was saying there are nice, big sounding statements about inclusiveness and involving the youth, which is an imperative. We cannot escape the youth being part of all the processes of governance. But unfortunately, sorry, I'm in the parliament building. You have to contend with that noise. So that's a bell. I'm in the parliament building and it rings in the whole building. I was saying the nice statements that are made about the youth have not been implemented in the most countries. They praise the youth. They don't want to be very bold for politics involving during elections. But then a lot of promises, and the status of the youth is like celebrated for a moment. But in terms of practical involvement of the youth, sharing the cake, participating, and also sharing their decisions within the governance structures, that has been missing in a number of cases. And I was just saying, Zimbabwe currently is in the process of amending the constitution. And I believe in the next 3 months or so, we'll have a constitution which provides reserve seats or special seats in parliament for the youth. We have done that for women. We have 60 seats reserved solely for women, but regardless of that, the women still contest in elections. They still snatch seats in competition with everyone. Then they still have 60 reserved extra. The same is going to happen for the youth. Each region or province will come up with its representatives in parliament. I think that is a good step in the right direction, but we think we should do far more than that, so that we see the youth in the executive, we see the youth in parliament. The youth need to come in and as they're saying, with Pan-African Parliament and Continental Parliament,
We'll call Chief and tell him that he's disconnected. Yeah, Honorable Vice President, if you can unmute from your side there.
Sorry, Jeff.
Connected at some points. Is it okay? Can I continue?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine, I continue. So I was saying Pan-African Parliament is the right forum because the Pan-African Parliament represents the whole continent. So we want to mobilize the youth of the continent, of course, linking with the diaspora youth and the other global youth so that they can have a forum and can assert themselves and influence decisions. Pan-African Parliament, as you may all be aware, it is like the European Parliament. It was constituted and launched in 2004. It's made up of a bureau, the top body, then you have your committees, and you have youth in 2 committees. There's a special caucus for the youth, which I believe after this forum, that we expect that caucus of the youth to be very active, to take all the issues arising from this today's meeting much further. And then Pan-African Parliament, as you are aware, is an organ of the AU, African Union. Its role is to promote peace and stability. Pan-African Parliament promotes women's rights and democracy, good governance, and also it provides a platform for the peoples of Africa to express themselves on any matter. Women, youth, imagine anything. That is what PAP represents. And at the moment, of course, Pan-African Parliament does not make laws that are binding on the member states on the continent. It has advisory powers and consultative powers, and even oversight and budgetary powers over the activities of the AU. Some of these powers is that you see them everywhere now observing elections to ensure that the elections are free and fair. We also see that the Pan-African Parliament recommends to the summit of heads of state, again, on any issue that would have debated and resolved. They end up with the AU. So the youth, if they have issues that they would want the heads of state on the continent to consider through Pan-African parliaments, that is very possible. Twice a year, it has been defying laws on the continent. And internally, the Pan-African Parliament is composed of regions: southern, western, northern, central, eastern. We have what we call regional caucuses. And these also discuss regional matters and present them to the plenary. And then beyond that, we then present these issues up to the summit of heads of state. So all I can say to this forum of the youth is that please use Pan-African Parliament. It's your parliament. It's the voice of the people for the whole continent. And it has good linkages and networks beyond the continent, including Europe and elsewhere. And as leadership of the Pan-African Parliament, we want to assure you that whatever deliberations, recommendations, ideas, opinions, as they gravitate into resolutions, we will be there for you. We support the youth wholeheartedly. It's our mandate as Pan-African Parliament to move the agenda of the youth. I therefore wish you a good, successful meeting. And also remember that we are in the period where the COVID-19 has ravaged most of the initiatives in various countries, the health sector, the trades, economies, and the youth should also, in this meeting, come up with brilliant ideas that, first of all, they should also be carried on board as we talk of COVID-19, which has changed the way we do business. The youth should come on board and influence the decisions during and post-COVID, so that, as I say, they are not just seen as an appendage of governance, but as also part of the epicenter of governance. I thank you very much. Please proceed. I'll be in and out of this meeting. I'm in position to be in attendance, but I bless Parliament blesses in full with our MPs participating here and the staff. We will be together in ensuring that we implement all the resolutions that arise from this meeting this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. Thank you. So I think just also to remind that the idea, Honorable Vice President, before we leave, is that the young people that we've brought in today have expressed desire to engage with the Pan-African Parliament. They've said that they have some ideas as to how the Pan-African Parliament can involve them, making sure that the mandate of the continental institution that we present is fully implemented the people of Africa. So we are going to give them the floor today to actually tell us a bit more about what their ideas are and how we can work together. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. You will be given a report as to how the meeting unfolded, as I know you have to go for your next one.
Thank you very much. With all my blessing, please proceed.
Thank you. We still want to ensure that obviously our young people today have a clear understanding of what their parliament is and does, and that's what the Honorable Vice President has just given us. We still want to continue slightly in terms of the background of the PAP and make sure that some of the points are clearly defined. That's why I'm going to call in Honorable Tapiwa Mashakada, who is going to just add on some of the points that the Vice President has touched on in terms of the presentation. Honorable Mashakada is from Zimbabwe, is a member of the Pan-African Parliament Committee on Trade. So, Honorable Mashakada, can you hear me?
Yes, sure, I do. Jeff, thanks.
Yeah, okay, so Honorable Mashakada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll quickly take over from where the chief left and just try to give you some historical background on the Pan-African Parliament. The Pan-African Parliament in the context of the AU institutions, objectives of the Pan-African Parliament, the PAP as a platform for African people, and powers and functions of the PAP, and also the status of PAP under the Malabo Protocol, the organs and structures of the Pan-African Parliament, and the Pan-African Parliament Youth Caucus, and the achievements of the Pan-African Parliament. I'll try to go through that in great detail, but also being cautious of the time. The Abuja Treaty of 1991, the African Economic Community, and the SET Declaration defined the pillars and grounds for realizing economic development and integration in Africa. Both instruments called for the establishment of the Pan-African Parliament as a means to ensure the full participation of African people in the development and economic integration of the continent. At the time of mutation of the OAU into AU, the Constitutive Act of the AU of 2000 established the AU institutional architecture, which included the PAP, whose operations are to be defined by a dedicated protocol. On 2 March 2001, the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament was adopted in SET, Libya. It vested the PAP with consultative, advisory, oversight, and budgetary powers. The PAP protocol entered into force on 14 December 2003, which enabled the inauguration of the PAP in March 2004. The PAP celebrated its 10 years of existence in March 2014, a year which coincided with adoption in June of the protocol to the Constitutive Act of the African Union relating to the PAP, that is the new PAP protocol or the Malawi protocol. Once in force, the Malawi protocol will transform the PAP into a quasi-legislative body of the OAU, or the AU rather. Now, I'll talk about PAP within the context of the African Union institutional architecture. The African Union has got the following features. We have the assembly of the Union, that is the heads of states. Then we have the Executive Council, which comprises of the foreign ministers. Then we've got the Permanent Representative Committee, which is composed of the ambassadors of African countries in Addis Ababa. We've got specialized technical committees, and we've got the Peace and Security Council at the AU. Now, we've got organs of the AU, and PAP is one of those organs, followed by the ECOSOC, the Economic and Social and Cultural Council, and of course, the AU Advisory Board on Corruption. We also have got the Court of Justice and Human Rights. We also have got the African Investment Bank, the African Monetary Fund, and African Central Bank as key organs of the AU. So you must look at PAP in the context of these other organs. The role of PAP as a quasi-legislative body is as follows. PAP gives advisory, or rather, PAP performs consultative function, number one. Number two, advisory function. Number three, budgetary function. And number four, oversight function over the AU and all its organs that I have outlined above. PAP represents and defends the voice of the peoples in the parliaments of Africa, and to ensure that full participation of these people is assured in the affairs of the African Union. Now, what are the objectives of the Pan-African Parliament? The first objective is that of facilitating the implementation of the policies, objectives, and programs of the AU by the various organs of the AU. Number two, promoting principles of human rights and democracy. Number three, encouraging good governance, transparency, and accountability in member states. Number four, familiarize the peoples of Africa with the objectives of and policies aimed at integrating the African continent within the framework of the establishment of the AU. Number five, promoting peace, security, and stability. So those are the 5 key objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. Now, if you look at PAP as a platform for the African people, it has got 7 features. The first one is to integrate women's voices in political processes of the Pan-African Parliament and the AU. The second feature is to build mechanisms for engagement, including integration, awareness, and campaigns with civil society and other non-state actors. The third one is to promote and protect press freedom and abolish criminal defamation and insult laws. The fourth one is to do with the youth, to advance the youth agenda on the African continent. Number 5, to share information with the public through online social platforms. Number 6, to allow citizens in the diaspora to express themselves. And lastly, to allow African citizens to express themselves through public hearings. That is the architecture of PAP as the AU Parliament. Now I go to the functions and powers of the PAP. These are provided for under Article 11 of the PAP Protocol and Rules number 4 and 5 of the Rules of Procedure of the Pan-African Parliament. And this can be categorized as follows. advisory powers. Power to discuss at its own initiative and express opinion on any matters relating to the AU organs, RECs, or any member states. Consultative powers. Power to discuss and give advice on any matters at the request of AU organs, RECs, and any member states. Oversight powers. Power to oversee the development and implementation of AU instruments, policies, and programs. Budgetary powers. Power to examine and debate the AU budget and make recommendations to the Assembly. Now, the African matters to be considered by the PAP have to do with the key values and principles that are embodied in the various instruments, decisions, and declarations that have been adopted by the Union, referred to as the African shared values, which include good governance, the rule of law, peace and security, democracy, and human rights. In exercising its powers, the PAP may, among other things, initiate or participate in electoral observer missions and other fact-finding missions in AU member states, request information from other AU organs on any AU matters and authorize them to make statements during sessions, receive representations or consult the African people and the diaspora, adopt recommendations and resolutions on any matters discussed. Now I'll talk about the new PAP or the Malawi Protocol versus the SET Protocol. You find that the SET Protocol gave a PAP just recommendation and advisory powers, whereas the Malawi Protocol is said to give powers, full legislative powers, as it were. Now, if you look at the SET Protocol, it views PAP as a consultative and advisory organ, whereas the Malawi Protocol views PAP as a legislative body in addition to consultative and advisory functions. The SET, which involves formulation of model laws, but process not defined in the SET Protocol. So the SET Protocol does not define how model laws are going to be enacted. But the new Malawi Protocol views or gives PAP legislative function and the right to exercise these through the formulation of draft model laws in areas determined by the EU Assembly or as may be proposed by the PAP. The SET Protocol says that PAP may be consulted by police organs, including on treaty making, but it has only happened twice over the last 15 years of PAP's existence. Whereas in the Malawi Protocol, PAP will systematically consider and submit opinions on draft legal instruments, treaties, and other international agreements. And again, in terms of the Malawi Protocol, PAP will receive and consider reports of other AU organs, except the Assembly, the Council, and the Court, including audit reports, which is not provided for in the SET Protocol. So you can see that there are various powers that are given the PAP in terms of the Malawi Protocol as a legislative body, which are not provided for in the SET Protocol. We just gave PAP advisory and consultative roles. Now I come to the ratification status of the new PAP Protocol. So far, we've got 21 signatures to the PAP Protocol, and the countries that have signed the new Malawi Algeria, Central African Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Sao Tome and Principe, Sudan, Zimbabwe, Benin, Cameroon, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Ghana, Madagascar, Mali, South Africa, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Togo. So these are 21 signatures, but only 12 countries have ratified the Malawi Protocol. I come to the organs of the Pan-African Parliament. According to the rule number 3 of the rules of procedure of the Pan-African Parliament, there is the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament and the permanent committees of Parliament. The Bureau is headed by the President of PAP, who is assisted by 4 other vice presidents representing each region of Africa, the central region, the southern region, the eastern region, the western region, and the northern region. And of course, there are 11 committees of the permanent committees of the Pan-African Parliament. We also have got regional caucuses. As I have talked about the 5 regions of Africa, each region has got its own caucus. We've got thematic caucuses, like the caucus on youth, and the caucus on women, and of course the secretariat that attends to the day-to-day functions of PAP. The work of Parliament starts at committee level, culminates and is finalized in the plenary with the adoption of resolutions and recommendations. So it functions as a proper parliament in terms of procedures. I'll now touch on the PAP caucus on youth, which was created in October 2012 to achieve the following. Number 1, to strengthen and consolidate the efforts aimed at giving young Africans a sense of responsibility in driving Africa's development agenda. Number 2, to ensure the lives activities in working with parliaments, implement the youth development program, keeping with the committee on youth, promote youth empowerment. Number 5, improve their well-being in the field of education and employment on the African continent. Now, what have been the key achievements of PAP to date, insofar as PAP's role in promoting AU policies and objectives is concerned? The first achievement was the ratification and domestication of AU legal instruments. I can say some of the AU legal instruments because we've not managed to ratify and domesticate all the AU legal instruments. But we've raised awareness on the importance of ratification and we are accelerating that process. Number 2, we've developed some model laws, especially the model law on disability and other model laws. Number 3, we've carried oversight and promoted the flagship programs of AU Agenda 2063 and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. You may recall that PAP has been in the forefront of promoting the establishment of free trade in that 2063. Number 4, African national parliament as well as the parliaments like the Maghreb Union Parliament. Number 5, we have got an institutional relationship with all the RECs, the 8 RECs that are recognized by the AU. And number 6, we have a relationship with other AU organs as well as the European Parliament through the monitoring of the Joint Africa-Europe Strategy, the National Parliamentary Union, IPU, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, Arab Interparliamentary Assembly, and other organizations. Now, touch on PAP's role in promoting peace, security, and human rights. We carry out electoral observations together with the AU. PAP participates in the missions, AU observer missions, when elections are held in all African countries. We also carry out fact-finding missions in troubled spots of Africa, for example, the Great Lakes region, DRC, Darfur, Central Africa Republic, Chad, Sahrawi, Somalia, Libya, hotspots. From time to time, PAP dispatches fact-finding missions in order to participate in the keeping of peace and security on the African continent. Gender and women empowerment. We've got a PAP Women Caucus to ignite discussion on violence against women and harmonize legislation of domestic violence on the continent. I've already talked about the caucus on youth that also PAP is involved in. So in a nutshell, I thought I should give you an overview of PAP and how it is structured in the context of the African Union and the peoples of Africa, with a view to integrating the continent to become successful and prosperous. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Mashakala. That's a very concise and yet a detailed presentation on what the Pan-African Parliament is. It was really important that you gave us an overview of the current powers of the Pan-African Parliament as a consultative and advisory body of the African Union versus the legislative powers that it is supposed to have once the Malabo Protocol is ratified. And most importantly, how the youth of Africa can play a role in ensuring that Parliament has those powers. And it was very important that you ended with an overview of the Youth Caucus, because as part of the Parliament's mandate to be a platform for the people of Africa, the focus on youth is a very key component in ensuring that the needs of the young people are taken into account. So thank you very much, Honorable Mashakala. I think now what we're going to do it into the engagement session of this lecture. And like I mentioned earlier, as we were putting this together and consulting with the youth, was a desire to also present on what they think should be done from the Pan-African Parliament side to involve them more. That's why we've been able to agree on a few topics. What we're going to do, we're going to give them a platform to present to us on what their concerns are, what their ideas are. Once they've done that, then we would bring in members of the Pan-African Parliament who are here today, and we will respond to some of the issues that you will be raising. So I will then bring in the first presenter. Abdullahi Ahmed Hassan is a leadership and governance student at Makerere University of Uganda. So Hassan is going to present on how he thinks the Pan-African Parliament can promote interest of young people and their political participation at the African Union level. So Hassan, if you are ready, the members of the Pan-African Parliament are here, and the Secretariat of the Pan-African Parliament is here, so we will give you the floor to tell us what you think should be done at that level. Thank you. So make sure you select your language, English, and then you mute original audio. Okay, please go ahead.
Jeff, we cannot hear anything, Jeff. Jeff,
Honorable, can you hear now?
I can hear you, but I cannot hear the student.
Asad, can you speak closer to the mic, please? Maybe that could be the problem.
I cannot hear the student speaking. I can't hear you. I can hear you clearly, but not the student.
Asad, try and speak closer to the mic. Try again, please. No? Try and speak closer to the mic, and yeah. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah, continue. Like I said, try to speak closer to the mic, and we'll check with the honorable if it's okay on this side as well. Please go ahead, proceed.
Jeff,
No, but you still can't hear?
yeah, I can't hear. And maybe others are hearing.
Okay, can I also check, is it, can anyone else hear him properly? Just
check with other people.
Okay.
Yeah, very well.
Okay. We just need to make sure that everyone else can hear, except the honorable. Maybe then we can identify what the problem is.
I can hear you, Jeff.
We can hear. I can hear him.
Okay. Okay. So honorable, it could be your side there. I'm not sure because I can also hear him properly. It looks like other people can hear him. So it could be from your side there, honorable. I'm not sure. Is your mic not covered in anything, or is everything okay on your side?
No, but I can hear you, Jeff, very clearly.
Okay.
Which means I'm connected and I'm in the meeting. But
yes.
For some reason, I can't get or hear the presentation. So I will not hold everybody. You can proceed. Maybe along the way I can catch up. But okay. So far I cannot hear. Okay.
So please again try again to speak closer to the mic and speak as loud as you can. And then we'll see how it goes. Yeah, go ahead, continue, please. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Hassan. We have an issue with interpretation. I know you're also wrapping up. But did you make sure that you select your language and unmute the original audio, because it looks like interpreters can't hear you. No, I can hear you because I'm on the English side. But can you make sure that you selected your language and that you are muted, because interpreters is an issue with interpretation. Just check under the interpretation box, and you are muted.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
Yeah, ask Peter to assist, because apparently we could not hear the interpreter for some reason.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I know you're wrapping up, Hassan. So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. Thank you. Please go ahead. Hassan, sorry. Hassan, I know catching you will be contrary to our objective of giving you a platform, and I'm sorry for that. But can you wrap up, because we still need to take other interventions. So if you try and do that in under a minute, would be appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your expose. And Hassan was presenting on how the Pan-African Parliament can promote the interests of young people and the political participation at Africa Union level. So I think just in summary, Hassan was calling on the PAP to ensure that young people are represented leadership level, whether it's at the Pan-African Parliament and other decision-making organs of the African Union. Hassan was also calling on the PAP to ensure that the young people of Africa are aware of the issues facing the continent. That goes through training these young people and giving them the tools to understand the world around them. I think Hassan also spoke about young people being stakeholders in governance on the continent. And then lastly, among other things, is also making sure that young people are protected and are also given the opportunity when it comes to jobs, that they are not discriminated against. It should not be based on tribalism. It should not be based on who you are as a person and the family you belong to. If you do that, if you give everyone a chance, then young people will have a role to play in our the continent progresses. So I think it's just in a nutshell, that's the point that Hassan was making. So what I'm going to do is, members of parliament are taking notes. I'm going to call on the next presenter, so that once we are all done, we are going to give the opportunity to members of parliament who are here to respond. So next presenter I'm going to call is actually, because we are in a global crisis situation. I'm going to jump and call on Charity Patel. Charity is from Ghana. She's the founder of MAE Transformation, which is the Foundation for Children in Ghana. Today she wants to talk to us about how the Pan-African Parliament can help mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the youth. So, Charity, I know you can do that in about 3 minutes. You told me already. So I'm going to give the platform. I'm going to give you a platform, and then our members are here. Just make sure you've selected the language, because I'm going to have to say that every time to make sure we are all good. Selected the language and then muted the original audio. So the role of the PAP in mitigating the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the youth. So just you have the floor, and then after that we'll engage further.
and it's all due to the connectivity. But if the Pan-African parliaments can use other traditional platforms like the radio, like television, like community engagement vans in areas that do not have access to these advanced means of communication, but reach out to them using the traditional means, it will greatly help. Because if somebody is using a smartphone, it's easy to get online. But if you're using a phone as tiny as the one I'm having in my hands, this thing has no internet connectivity. The only thing I can do is just to plug in my earpiece and listen to the radio. So if the Pan-African Parliament can use the radio as a means, or use the television as a means, or community engagement as a means to reach out to everyone, and I mean everyone, not some group, everyone, including the youth, on the effects of the pandemic, what it is and what it means to be safe during the crisis, what it means for each and everyone to protect him or herself, and also adhere to the protocols that have been set up by the WHO and each and other member countries. I think it will be of a great help to even ease the work of the Pan-African Parliament, and also ensure that the youth of the country and of the continent are at par when it comes to understanding the work and the mandates and objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. One thing, finally, let me make this point clear. When the pandemic was high and lockdowns were in place, we saw the spikes in violence. And in most of the cases that were recorded, I can speak for Ghana, I can speak for countries like Kenya, from Rwanda, from Nigeria, because we've been having some correspondences from these countries. And lots of the violence that were recorded were involving the young people from the ages as young as 5 years through to 45 years. These were people who were being involved in violence in one form or the other, being it whether sexual violence or domestic violence or whichever other way. I think that the Pan-African Parliament can leverage on the influence of the youth of today in ensuring that the message of ending violence, especially during crises such as these, and be of a giant step in the advocacy work of PAP. Why am I saying this? Almost all young people have access to community groupings. They have friends who tell a friend to tell a friend of the things they are hearing. If the Pan-African Parliament can leverage on the wide network of the youth in getting the word out there and ensuring that they are, first of all, guards of their friends, and also look out for people who have the tendency to be violent during such lockdowns, it will be of great help. And I think that it would really, really, really help us as a continent to make giant strides in regaining our self-reliance, in regaining our power as a continent and as a beacon of hope for other continents out there. And so the youth have been, I might say that the youth have been affected in so many ways, but I think that this crisis, this COVID-19 pandemic has also opened a lot of opportunities for the youth to be heard, to be proactive. We've seen a lot of inventions from the youth. People are coming up with so many ways of the hand washing devices, soap dispensing devices, and other things. This pandemic, in as much as it has its numerous negativities, has also given us the opportunity as a continent and as a generation of youth to really explore beyond our capabilities. And this is the time for the Pan-African Parliament to leverage on the already existing and the new inventions of the youth to really move the continent to a place where we can finally say that we are rubbing shoulders with the European countries and the Asians. So my name still remains Charity Emihil Battles, and I'm from Ghana. I'm the founder for Emihil Transformation, a foundation for children. And today, my role is to address the effects, the role of the Pan-African Parliament in mitigating the impact of COVID-19 on the youth. Thank you so very much. I'm on standby for any questions or suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Charity. I really appreciate that. So I think you presented on the, obviously, the current situation that we are all facing as a continent. And then it was important that young people were given a floor here today to engage with members of the Pan-African Parliament. So just to sum up, I think three things that is you asking for accountability to be enforced during this time, given the lockdowns, the regulations that have been put in place in respective countries, putting on the PAP to make sure that these are respected and that human rights and people's liberties are still safeguarded. You also wanted to know what the PAP has done during the early days of this pandemic, and especially with young people in mind, given that the PAP is the representation of the people of Africa, young people. So you also and finally to pandemic, making sure that the PAP leverages on youth.
Jeffrey, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm not sure when I started, but let me just. I was saying that I'm going to call Brenda next, and that members of parliament, of course, what they are doing is I'll be calling them afterwards, and they will choose on the issue that they want to respond on, and then so I will call Brenda Wanjiru. Brenda Wanjiru is a student at the Kenya School of Law and International Law, and she's an African history educator. You know, the fact that we are in a global health crisis also does not make us forget that as an African Union family, we still are we have a theme of the year. The theme of the year is silencing the guns. And that is why Brenda today wanted to talk to us about how the Pan-African Parliament can effectively involve the youth in promoting peace and security on the continent. So she also has told me that she will do it in under 3 minutes. So Brenda, I will give you then the floor for your 3 minutes to actually talk to us about how you think the PAP can involve you in this regard.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. In light of the theme for this year of silencing the guns, I would like to start by saying that the absence of war does not necessarily mean that there's peace in the state or in the region or the society. When we talk about silencing the guns, we need to look at this thing in two aspects. There's the physical silencing of the guns. I think various states in Africa have done that, where you have people who are who own guns and ammunition, give them back to the state. But then there's the symbolic silencing of the guns. And I believe that as the PAP, we need to actually look at the symbolic silencing of the guns before we get to the physical silencing of the guns, because the symbolic is what affects the physical. A very good example Ms. Charity had given with the situation of COVID-19. We've seen a lot of violence taking place with the youth. And some of these reasons come in with the environment that these youth are in. You have specific youth who, for example, are experiencing traumatic events. And so to just sort of to silence this traumatic events, they end up taking violent acts on this specific people and environment, just so that to remove whatever it is that's annoying them and to bring peace. Now, if we don't look at what caused this, then we'll still continue talking about silencing of the guns. If we look at the situation of Congo, we are used to talking about we need peace in Congo, we need peace in Congo, in the Sahel region, in the Sudan. But have we looked at the environment before these guns came in? One, we need to ask ourselves what environment led to these guns. coming in. An issue that we need to tackle is, for example, the issue of elections in Africa. We've realized that a lot of these states, there's usually marginalization in this specific states. Of course, it is different from state to state. It could be tribalistic, as our first speaker spoke about. It could be economical marginalization. And so if we keep pushing people to one end, of course they are going to revolt. And now when they take this specific actions, then we come in and say, okay, we need to silence the guns. But if we do not look at what actually brought in these guns, then we have not solved the situation. If I may get another example that we can use, is the situation between the Nile Dam situation. If we do not actually sit down, and find out why are these two guys arguing, what has led to this argument, then in about 2-3 years, we'll be hearing about civil war in these two specific countries. Then we will come and start saying, oh, okay, this is the theme of silencing the guns. But if we do not look at what happened before, this thing will continue to this thing will continue. If I'm to move to South Africa, statistics have shown that it is the third, for lack of a better word, most violent state in the world when it comes to gun violence. But if we separate the information in the statistics, we realize that this is actually partner to partner, a partner to partner situation when it comes to gun violence. Now, if we look at this partner who is actually harming their fellow partner using a gun, then at some point this person it's going to affect them mentally, and they're going to go above and beyond. They may go and rob a bank. They may go and shoot school students, and then we'll come in and say, oh, we need to silence the guns. But if we had not dealt with the environment that led to this, so to say, using of guns, then we will not be able to solve the situation. Just to run through the Charter on African Cultural Renaissance, which we ascribe to, in its preamble states that the protection, there is need for the protection of African history and culture, which is actually a unifying factor of Africans in Africa and outside. If I'm to use an example of this with the situation in Cameroon, we have two groups that are in conflict, the French side and the English side. Before we come in and say that we physically need to silence the guns, have we looked at what led to this situation? Well, one of the reasons was marginalization. The second reason, a reaction to colonialism. We saw how the United Nations Trusteeship Council did not handle this situation well. And thus we have future generations coming in and saying, you people have been treated well. Now it's our time to actually enjoy our country. But instead of actually looking at this, we come in and say, let's silence the guns. If we would like to actually silence these guns, one, we need to ask the question why, first of all. Second thing, this could go to recommendations, the role of media, the Pan-African Parliament. You can use this. I think Ms. Charity had explained this. You can use this to your benefit because the media plays a huge role in escalating and de-escalating a conflict. If I may give an example of my brothers and sisters in Rwanda, if you visit the Kigali Genocide Museum, there is a part in the museum that shows you exactly the role the media played in escalating the conflict. If I may use my country, Kenya, there have been certain TV stations that have gone to the roots, having radio stations, as Ms. Charity had suggested, who have actually gone to the grassroots level and using the various traditional language, whether it's Pokomo, whether it's Pokot, to reach out to the people, especially during this time where we have, I think, about 7 countries in Africa that are about to go for elections. Are you actually talking to these people, about elections, how to vote, their civic rights? Are we providing the correct African civic education, just also to expand on that. Another problem that we see that escalates conflict in Africa is the issue of post-election violence. We cannot come in and say that there is a lot of post-election violence here when we have not looked at the situation beforehand. Was there instigation? Was there a push and shove situation? If we have not dealt with that, then the aftermath of that elections, we have citizens who feel like this was so unfair, and we're going to react. So as I said, use of media, positive use of media. The second thing, incentives, and I have seen this work in the East African community. If you come in, for example, if you have refugee children and you come in because they understand the situation when it comes to mental health, post-traumatic stress from the war, if you have them come in and say, okay, this is what we experience and this is the environment that I would like to live in, then they can actually be able to motivate fellow refugees and hosts, citizens of that country to actually do better. A very good example, if as the PAP, your presence to be felt, for example, in South Sudan, you can go with them, listen to their stories, and then you come in and say, okay, we realize your environment is not safe enough. What we'll do is we'll build you a school, we'll provide you with good African education that promotes peace and African traditional values, so to say. And for this, you have to assist us in reaching to other South Sudanese to promote peace. They're going to take this opportunity because this is their land and this is their people, and they're going to use this opportunity to ensure that we have a peaceful land. Now, with Ms. Charity's recommendations, if we have a peaceful society, then we're able to actually achieve the Agenda 2063. Moving on to the final recommendation, education. Communication is key when it comes to achieving something. For example, the African youth are always looking for your support, in the sense that I was made to understand that the Pan-African Parliament invites university students to come to the Pan-African Parliament and learn how the sessions works, and that's fine. But there's a difference between them coming in and the Pan-African Parliament actually going to them and being like, okay, this is what we do, and this is what we tried. It seems not to have worked. What are your suggestions? You will get more support from the youth, and they will be willing to work with you. But if we put them in a situation where let's just have Zoom meetings and let them talk about this on Facebook, then they do not feel the presence inside. The second thing is also the partnerships that you get into. If the youth themselves feel like you are not promoting partnerships within the continent, then they may feel like there's no need for us to actually help you. If I may give the example of the AU-EU partnership, if you look at the website, when it comes to the financials, it is fully funded by the European Union. Now we have the youth who will look at the African Union and say like, okay, they're actually being funded by the European Union. So now how can we then reach them, and how do we work with them and ensure that our incentives and our recommendations actually reach to them and are implemented? At the end of it all, for us to actually achieve anything in Africa with regards to peace, because peace is everything, we need to ask ourselves, are we truly independent? I think that you could partner with the Pan-African Lawyers Union, who will actually do a very good job when it comes to civic education. There was a question on trade and employment rights. They can actually work on that. If we feel like you're listening to us and you're protecting our rights, and when it comes to rights, it also expands to intellectual property rights. ARIPO can also come in, and the African Academy on Languages. If we actually give them the support, we will be amazed by the things they used to do. So one, are we truly independent? Two, do we truly want a united Africa? And three, are we actually willing to work for a united Africa? I would like to finish with a quote that my grandmother loves to say: if a child does not feel the society's warmth, it will burn it to the ground just to feel it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you very much. That was brilliant. And then, luckily for us, we have chairperson of the African Parliament Committee on International Relations, Cooperation and Conflict Resolution, who's with us today on some of the peace and security issues that you raised. Thank you very much, because again, the members are taking notes, and I just wanted to highlight the things that you mentioned. I think the key theme today is involvement. You are all asking for more involvement, helping the Pan-African Parliament and the African Union as a whole in the finding solutions for the African continent. And you also spoke about the role of media. You want the PAP to pay attention to how the media is able to influence conflict on the continent, and how they can play a very, very decisive role there. You also spoke about how it's okay to have young people come to the PAP. You want real and genuine engagement, and the PAP going to the young people and really getting their views on how this should be done. So thank you very much. I'm going to the last intervention, at least from this session, is Tanvi Jiva. Tanvi is from Mauritius. She's a Master of Law student at the University of Cape Town. Her presentation today is how we can, as the Pan-African Parliament, leverage digitalization to engage youth. So she wants to give us some ideas and on how we can be more effective in terms of technology, and how we can reach young people in Africa, because this is her line of work, luckily for us. So, Tanvi, you have the floor for your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi à tous mes francophones. Thank you, Honorable Vice President, for your message, Honorable Dr. Mashagada, for your presentation, and thank you to the PAP for having all of us, the youth, to speak about certain issues that we're having. As Jeffrey said, I'm Tanvir Jiwa. I'm an LLM student at the University of Cape Town, and I'm also a researcher at the African Legal Information Institute, also known as the African Me. And what the African Me does is it helps individuals, organizations, institutions, and governments build and maintain sustainable free access to law portals. So essentially, a lot of digitalization involved with African Me, making law more accessible to other African countries. And hopefully you will see that African Me aligns itself a lot with the values that the PAP has. And you will find that what I have to contribute is worth your time, hopefully. So when I got this question, I thought to myself, this is a great time to have these discussions, because as you all know, with the coronavirus pandemic, we have seen that digitalization is not just an alternative now. It's a consequential part of our future. I mean, to state the obvious, we're having this conference right now online. And I have seen that it makes it more accessible. For example, this conference makes it more accessible to the youth, because I'm hoping that other young people are actually wanting to see their friends online. So they're coming on to see this chat. And in this way, it's more accessible to what a physical conference would have been, right? As opposed to paying for transport and physically getting there, which a lot of African youth can't afford. But what also came to mind is the issue of access. When we're talking about digitalization, we need to realize that not everyone has access to social media, to internet, to computers, and to smartphones. And to touch on what Charity and Brenda both said, you lose a lot of your audience by deciding to go through digitalization. By not choosing to use TVs or radio, we're losing a lot of people. So I think it's a really important part of this conversation to realize that it is tragic that many young Africans who might benefit more from the PAP might not have access to the PAP if we choose to focus only on digitalization. So although I will be discussing digitalization, I want us to have that thought and engage with it, and maybe promise to work on it later, where we realize that there are different obstacles for different classes of African societies when it comes to digitalization. But beyond that, if we park that thought and we ask ourselves, when it comes to the PAP, does the African youth even know the PAP? I think that was my first question that came to mind. And I went on my Twitter, as one usually does, and I ran a poll to the people who follow me, and I simply asked, has anyone heard about the Pan-African Parliament before? And I've had around 110, 115 people vote. and more than half, actually approximately half of the people voted no. And that was already quite surprising to me, because I immediately went to the PAP's Twitter following, and I saw that the PAP has around 30,000 followers. But it made me think about the fact that just because you have a big social following, it doesn't necessarily mean that a majority of these followers are youth. So how do we engage with the youth? First and foremost, we need to make people know what the PAP means. And what that entails is possibly make the PAP more visible. So I am going to try to put forward a lot of actual strategies that one can enforce, and not just abstract ideas of what should be attained. And I think a big part of that is social media strategies. It's not enough to only have social media, although it's a good first step. One should engage with the youth on social media. And I've seen what a lot of institutions have done is having social media strategies. And a big part of that is often having polls, engaging with people, and sometimes things as silly and small as having a fun fact Friday about the PAP. And while that might sound really stupid and small, a lot of institutions do that, because the reality is that a lot of youth don't know about the PAP. What does the Pan-African Parliament do? What does it stand for? What are these values in a day-to-day environment? What do MPs do at the PAP? I think that would be very, very interesting. Like, I'm sure a lot of us didn't know there was a bell that rang at the Pan-African Parliament today. We found it out online. So I think it would be very interesting to see that social media strategy developed, make it more accessible, make it more engaging, have polls, have Fun Fact Fridays, and so on. Just actually, like what Brenda said, don't put things out there and expect the youth to engage with you, but be proactive. You engage with the youth. For example, this platform is extremely interesting. Here we are, young people engaging with the MPs and sharing a lot of ideas. And if we could do that in different formats, another thing that Brenda touched on is having collaborations. Have collaborations with universities, with high schools, not just getting one or two people coming and actually speaking to the conference once in a while, but rather engaging with the youth in terms of reaching out to different universities on the African continent and letting people know that, there's this institution, here's our social media, here's what we do. Let's brand it more, let's advertise it more, get more people interested in the work that you do. You would be so surprised to know the amount of people who have public interest in mind and who would actually love to do, for example, what coronavirus has shown us can be a one-day internship visually, online with the Pan-African Parliament. That would be a very innovative idea, which I've seen a lot of other institutions do, is just having those online internships. And that also helps because we often forget that Africa as a continent is massive, right? When the PAP works for Africa, it works for around 54 countries. You can't possibly expect someone to come and intern and physically come here in South Africa, in Midrand, when in African travel costs so much of money. So use digitalization to your advantage, make people more interested in it, have these workshops, have these collaborations with universities and high schools, and get people involved in online virtual internships. And in that way, you create platforms for engagement with the African youth. You make the PAP more accessible, because it's one thing. Remember when I asked, does the youth know about the PAP? It's one thing for the youth to know about the PAP, and it's another for them to find the PAP accessible. Because at the end of the day, what Parliament usually deals with, laws, policies, governance, it all feels very intimidating to a lot of the youth, right? A lot of people don't really want to talk about law unless they're law students. So we need to find a way to make it less daunting and make it more appealing to the African youth. And thinking about, who do we think of when we think about the African youth? We tend to target people around their 20s, 30s, but that's not the only people who are the youth. We have people who are much younger, and it's always nice to get people roped in when they're much younger, giving a sense of democracy. And I think we shouldn't think of things as being too childish or below our level when we're working. I've seen a lot of institutions that do essay competitions, drawing competitions, anything to get the youth engaged. We mustn't think of ourselves so highly that we would only require high level engagement in terms of writing academic papers. Rather, actually open the field very broadly to different kinds of people, because I think that's the key with access, is we're not just targeting one type of people from one class, from one type of environment. We're targeting everyone. We want to make it as accessible to as possible to the African youth, and that's regardless of the age. So I think this would be a really interesting way to just creating this platform for more engagement, making the PAP more visible, and actually putting this brand out there. And I would personally like us to have the same feel as, although the PAP is a branch of the African Union, many more people know about the African Union than they know about the Pan-African Parliament. And that's just a fact. But you wouldn't say the same, obviously, about the United Nations and the different branches of United Nations, right? And although our target should never just be Western institutions, it would be really good to see the resources of the African continent harvest in such a way that we can make our own branches gain traction on the continent. So these are a few ideas that came to mind when thinking about how to use digitalization, regardless of the issue that we have with access with digitalization on the African continent. Another thing that came to mind is a lot of you might know about the Parliamentary Monitoring Group in South Africa. And essentially, it's an organization that works with the parliament in South Africa. And what I thought was really interesting is a lot of students and a lot of young people are involved in the PMG. And the way they do that is through social media, but mostly by targeting universities, by asking students to come in and sometimes transcribe some parliamentary meetings, answer some questions, and so on. So I think that's yet another platform that the PAP must use to get African youth to be more interested, to be very honest, with what goes on at the PAP. And lastly, I just also wanted to say that although this kind of platform is really interesting to get the youth to talk about the youth and problems, I think it's very important for the African Union generally to realize that just because young people are young, it doesn't mean we can only talk about being young and having issues that pertain to our age. I think there needs to be more intersectionality. Young people can also talk about gender equality, can also talk politics, can also talk economics, and a lot of issues that might be prevailing. You don't want to corner young people into only talking about involving the youth, and rather having young people to come in and talk about more issues, because quite frankly, as we all know, the youth is literally the future, because we are going to be the next generation that takes on this place. So the earlier we get initiated into what's happening, the better it is for everyone. And that's how you get engagement. People who are 15 already know they want to work for the UN at 15. So it's quite, it's not asking for too much to ask someone to make it more accessible to kids, so that one day when we have kids, our kids at 15 can also want to be a member of the PAP. So I think we should broaden our focus and just think about who we are talking about when we talk about the youth, and think about the different ways in which social media and other aspects of digitalization can help us. And just to build on one more thing that Ahmed and Brenda and Charity touched on with respect to the proactivity that the PAP has. This is already a brilliant platform, but we want to see more collaborations. We want to see more engagement from the PAP, instead of just asking the youth, how do we get you guys to engage, but also engaging with us. Trying and failing is okay, but as long as the trials are still being done over and over again. But mostly, I think some things have been tried and tested in other areas, like I said again, internships, but to make it more accessible using the digitalization to do that. So, Jeffrey, this is it on my side. Thank you so much. I'm Tanvir Jiwa, an LLM student and also a researcher at African Me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's another brilliant presentation. And you stuck to 3 minutes. I mean, my watch isn't working, but you were under 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Listen, we discussed this before. These ideas, we appreciate them. We love them because we need to see how you guys are seeing us from the outside. That's the only way we are going to improve our engagement with you. So the tips that you've shared, these are the tips that we need to put into practice so that at least we know we are talking to people who are going to see the messages and react. So things like social media strategy being more I think we need to be more active, like you say. We also need to be more engaging in terms of we shouldn't assume that you guys know. We shouldn't also assume, like you said, that we are too big to communicate in a certain way. Just need to be able to meet you halfway and speak your language. So thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is the members of parliament who are here, they're not specifically going to respond to each of the thematics. But listen, most of the questions that you've asked also, we actually noted them, and then they will still be part of the overall. I'm just going to give them the opportunity, after listening to you, on the COVID-19 situation on the youth, on the digitalization, on peace and security, and obviously on political participation, and invite them and see what they have to respond after the different presentation. So the first member of parliament who has already indicated that he wants to respond is actually Honorable Lutfi Sharif Mohammed from Somalia. He's also the rapporteur of the Pan-African Parliament Committee on Agriculture and Rural Economy. So, Honorable, you've listened to those presentations. I think I'm just going to invite you to make any comments on what you've just listened and how you think we can work with the youth going forward. Also, what you think the youth can do to help the Pan-African Parliament as part of today's topic. Honorable, you have the floor. Can you unmute on your side there, Honorable?
No.
Yeah. Just making sure you select the language. Sorry, Honorable. Did you select English? And
thank you very much, Jeffrey. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, according to his or her time. First and foremost, I'm very pleased to be with you today, including the Deputy President of PAP, Excellence Chief Trompira, and my colleagues from PAP, including my friend Abubakar, and all other protocols observed, and the MPs who are in this digital forum. It's a great pleasure for me today to speak with you to this valuable digital forum. I thank you for inviting me to be a part of this important talk and extend my regards to the leadership and the honorable members of Pan-African Parliament, which I'm also a member, as well as all the organizers and the audience, including the young educators and the experts who are in this forum. Let me start by acknowledging the current health crisis that we face as a continent and as a world. As one of the presenters alluded to earlier, the African youth will be deeply impacted by coronavirus 19 or COVID-19. The PAP really has understood the urgency to mitigate the risk for young people, and our role as your representative is to ensure that the government must put measures in place to protect and assist young people, including you. This is why, since the beginning of this pandemic, the PAP has done a lot of things, including urged all AU member states to coordinate their response to pandemic. For example, like Somali government put at emergency budget more than 5 million at the first stage to cope with this pandemic disease, which affects all the people in this globe. Also, the PAP called on African governments to increase their health budgets and also convene meetings with the AU institution in charge of the leading continental response to assess the progress in fight. And also, as PAP did really a lot of things, including as we are also urging our governments to ensure that the post-COVID-19 budgets take into account the needs of the young people and how the governments are supposed to protect them. As an early career politician and a member of both Somali Parliament and a member for Pan-African Parliament, I have a great moral mandate to dedicate my time to promote the interest of our young people in our African continent and in respective countries. And it's a fundamental goal for me to push this agenda, which allows our younger generation to have a strong political participation to the African Union level as well as our respective countries. Because we know the youth in the world and also in this continent are the main asset that every country has. To achieve this goal, I have some key issues to raise to you in order to enlighten our meeting audience to have understanding how we can make sure the youth to have a critical role and political participation to African Union level. It's a good start that we have the Pan-African Parliament, which is a continental body, and brings together members from all the African parliaments. But it's not yet enough. Why? Because as we are all aware of, our continent has over 75% of its population are under the age of 30. And in my country, Somalia, over 74% of the population are around the age of 30. In this regard, we have all responsibilities to make sure the young people to have influence in the decision-making, both in the continent level. The PAP has been pushing this agenda to empower the young generation in different levels, and it is still pushing this agenda. But the fact that the parliament has its main mandate as advisory, it can't make legislative decisions that directly affect the lives of the youth in our respective countries. As you know, the Malabo Protocol of 2014, which was adopted by the heads of state of our countries, which envisions the Pan-African Parliament to become the legislative body and improve the legislations that affect the lives of the people of the continent, including the young people and the educators. But yet the protocol has not fully ratified, which means the PAP has only advisory mandate yet until now. The ratification can encourage actions aimed at improving the socio-economic lives of the young people, freedom, and also the citizens of the continent. We, as a member of Pan-African Parliament, don't have, until now, the requisite 28 signatories of the Malabo Protocol. My guess, it's around 11 signatories, which till now have ratified. Up to now, we can't fully fledged parliament, which can produce or make legislation that compel our governments to promote the interests of our young people. This is a need the youth to stimulate the younger generation to act on the need of the member states to ratify the Malabo Protocol, which makes the Pan-African Parliament as a legislative body that can improve your participation of continental affairs and the leadership. The ratification can encourage actions aimed at improving the socio-economic situation of young population, as well as improving the opportunities that create a better life conditions and better representative for all citizens of the continent. If the countries you represent ratify the Malabo Protocol as it is, the Pan-African Parliament would have the mandate to produce legislation that force the member states and the governments to improve the social services, including the justice and also the human rights you have. What I would suggest for young people who are in this forum and also those who are watching on the live to listen me here, the audience, to level up your influence on the parliamentarians in your respective countries, especially those in your constituencies, and convince them to push the agenda for ratification of Malabo Protocol, in which the member states, specifically in which the member states countries. You can launch campaigns on the social media, you can create a cross-country discussion forums and lobby in big cities in Africa, encourage youth in all countries to join the campaign and influence the continental leaders to support the Malawi Protocol, which I believe will affect at the end of the game our lives. If the campaign is win, the PAP will produce continental legislators that improve your life conditions and lives of the generation to come, and it would also give the younger generation the opportunity to lead their countries and the continent as well. Having a continental legislative body, which I mean giving PAP a legislative mandate, will create hope for our youth that are dying in the deserts and in the Mediterranean Sea while trying to mitigate to Europe, where they seek a better life but end up in difficult living conditions. In the Quran, as we are Muslim, we have a verse which says, God will not change those who don't change themselves, which means that God helps those who wanted to make positive change to their communities and countries. Finally, I would request all of you, if the audience to note down today the promise to push the member of your parliament who represents your constituents or community to bring the Malawi Protocol to the table of the parliamentarian and ratify it. If your influence on the member of parliamentarians that represent you pave the way for the ratification of Malawi Protocol, it will create an opportunity to lead your country. So I'm sure where you can lead the countries, you can lead the continent. When you lead the continent, you can make the change you want to see. That's my call for today in this forum. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Nru. Thank you very much for that presentation. I think what Honorable also done there is, having listened, has also called on the youth to ensure that the Malabo Protocol, the African Parliament Protocol, that the youth gets behind that to ensure that it is ratified by member states, because then it will give the Pan-African Parliament bigger mandate to act on behalf of the people of Africa, especially the youth of Africa. So you also have been given a challenge as young people here. Thank you very much, Honorable. So the next member of parliament that I'm going to call is Honorable Abubakar Kone from Cote d'Ivoire. Is the chairperson of the Pan-African Parliament Committee on International Relations, Cooperation, and Conflict Resolution. Honorable Kone has listened, especially because we also had a topic on peace and security. I'm going to give him the floor to also try and respond to some of the issues that were raised and make his call. Thank you very much, Honorable. You have the floor. Thank you.
The Honorable needs to unmute for the interpreter to hear him.
C'est bon?
Yes, it's okay now.
C'est bon.
Merci beaucoup de me donner la parole.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Saluer donc
I would like to salute the Honorable Chief who opened this session and to commend the efforts made by the administration to ensure that PAP can resist this outbreak. I also wish to commend the students, our young brothers who made presentations this morning with most enriching topics and made proposals and even tried to provide guidelines as to how the Pan-African Parliament would be functioning. Well, it's an exhibition of the youthful zeal and enthusiasm, the kind of involvement that the young would like to Yes, you're receiving me? Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's in connection with the topic under discussion. Now, we're talking about the relations between the youth and the Pan-African Parliament. How will we get the youth to get to know the Pan-African Parliament? Or more specifically, how to involve the youth in the business of the Parliament? Now, I'm not going to go back to the introduction of the Parliament. My colleague, Honorable Tapiwa, has dwelt on it lengthily. In fact, the chief also dwelt on it. Now, we have something like Africa has something like 1.3 billion, and the youths account for, say, 60%. So they need to contribute. We have 41% between 0 and 14 years. And if we go towards, say, 35, I think maybe from 35 years, 70% account for the overall population of Africa. So no doubt the youths are, might I say, the strength of the future of the continent. Now, how can we involve these youths? The young lady who took the floor referred to the legislative role of PAP. Now, let's be a bit honest or sincere. PAP is somewhat disabled today. It has a lot of good intentions. We pull out a lot of resolutions, but then our laws or our resolutions are not binding on Africa or the rest of the countries of Africa. We've had resolutions who have sought to transform ourselves into a legislative body, but we do not have the same powers as the national parliament. So I fully agree with my colleague that we should lay more stress so that we can have laws that are binding. I also agree that even within PAP, we should introduce a new form of communication. I do agree with a young person who said that the youth should be involved, should be active during our own sessions, and in other words, to various countries to come into direct contact with the youths. I do agree with that view. I think we need to take that into account. In other words, we go to the countries, we get to meet the youth in their own countries, be involved in various youth associations, and ensure that young men and women do get involved in the activities of PAP in their respective countries. I think moving to other countries would be a useful approach, because we would involve the youths, the students, etc., in our work, and they would be operating in their own environment and get to see what is their day-to-day concerns. Let me further point out that the youths do not get involved. For instance, I want to talk about elections. In Côte d'Ivoire, my own country, as from 18 years, you're allowed to vote. But we then unfortunately notice that these young men and women do not come in, do not get involved. They need to come and be involved so that they can get someone whom they think would bring happiness and satisfaction to them. Get such a person to move into power. Now, a lot of our people are illiterate, but then even the illiterates are more involved in making an attempt to get into power than our youths. We need to have a lot of debates and discussions at university level. Unfortunately, our youths who are literate only get involved in the talking, but they do not act. I think they should be made aware of the strength that they represent in the country. 60% of the population is a lot, it's huge, and they can do lots of things. There's one of the young persons here who said we shouldn't just restrict ourselves to asking the youths to have them only tell us what they can learn from us. What can they also contribute? You see, they're asking us to listen to the youths, work with the youths, for the youths. And maybe they should be directly involved. And we need to work together so that the youth can actually participate in a clear and unequivocal manner in the activities of the PAP. Let me further point out there's been a lot of change in the PAP in the recent years, since 2017. I have been a part of the renewal of the membership of PAP, and there's a lot of emphasis being placed on the youths, and even the youths themselves are somehow represented, not only at the parliament in South Africa, but also in their respective countries. I also wish to call on the youths to seize the opportunity by getting involved themselves in the politics of their respective countries, by becoming interested in the political issues, because it is the issues who the politicians that will determine the future of the country. So if the youths are involved in a responsible matter, as for their own share in public affairs, no one can deny them that share of involvement in public affairs. We've taken due note of the proposals that have been made, particularly with respect to the Cooperation Committee. We have duly noted what has been said, and we'll spare no effort to ensure that we are more seen out of Parliament. Because when it comes to cooperation, if you don't move to meet the others, you don't achieve your purpose. If you have no opportunity to externalize your efforts and cooperate with the youths, you cannot succeed. Because the youths are asking that this Pan-African Parliament should come and visit the youths. But we have started in the last 2 years in carrying out a lot of activities out of our seat. Maybe we should redesign or reformulate the way and manner in which we are doing our things. We can focus on school children or university students. And let me emphasize the issue of education. I think in every respect we should emphasize education, because the literate ones are the least vulnerable. Because now we have all these fundamentalists and terrorists. And notice that it's those who are illiterate who are more inclined to get involved in these terrorist groups. And so I wish to commend young men and women for the contribution they have made to the work of the Pan-African Parliament. I wish to assure them that contribution will be put to use, and that the Pan-African Parliament does take into account their contribution. And we will make proposals to the Bureau, to the plenary, so that we should look again or redesign our communication with the youth. In other words, redesign our forms of cooperation with the youth. That said, I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, honorable Koné. Merci beaucoup. Je pense que vous avez également pris le soin de montrer aux jeunes.
I think you have equally taken the opportunity to show to the youth that you have listened to them, because they have come here to try to acquaint themselves, to get to know whether the Pan-African Parliament is listening to them. And you have agreed with the youth that the members of the Pan-African Parliament should also go and meet the youths, go to the African communities, and investigate the circumstances in which they live in their respective communities. In the recent years, the Pan-African Parliament has sent more missions to various countries, and so as to get acquainted with the problems facing Africans. So thank you very much. And I am sure that the youths who are going to take the floor will also take into account the concerns that have been raised here. And those concerns will be submitted to you, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament. And you would then see what kind of action needs to be taken. Now, I have Dr. Mapua, whose hand is raised, and maybe he would need to address those issues that have been raised. And you have Honorable Chakanda. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. I want to address the question of the PAP and its role in mitigating the impact of the COVID-19 on the youth. I have listened very carefully to the presentation by Charity, and it is very clear that there's an overall concern that PAP is not visible and that the voices of the youth are not being heard. But I want to assure all the youth that are listening that PAP is there to integrate and involve the youth in all its programs. Remember the youth dividend. The highest population in Africa are the youth. And to the extent that PAP is a parliament of the people, it means that the majority of the people who are going to be represented in PAP are the youths. So be assured that the youths will be taken on board. But I just want to also respond to your question on why the PAP has been slow in responding to the issues of mitigating the impact of COVID on the youths, especially during this pandemic and the lockdown. They have raised issues of violence that the youth are subjected to, domestic violence, sexual violence. You have also referred to the tramping down of human rights by security forces as they try to enforce lockdown and so on and so forth. Those are very valid observations. And I just want to share with you a few issues that PAP has done in a bid to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the youth across the African continent. The first intervention that PAP has done or has made is to appeal to all national governments and regional governments across Africa to prioritize the funding of healthcare and education, especially online education during this COVID pandemic. PAP has been in the forefront to urge all national governments through their national parliaments and encouraging national parliaments to carry oversight over their government to make sure that enough budgetary resources are targeted towards the health sector, the supply of masks and sanitary hygiene, and so on and so forth to combat COVID. So yes, PAP has been in the forefront in that regard. Also assisting the Center for Disease Control at Addis Ababa to make sure that the health budgets of African countries are increased to cater for the impact of COVID. The other area of intervention is that you know that most young entrepreneurs have been affected by COVID in the sense that their businesses have been closed, especially the small to medium and micro enterprises. PAP has been urging national governments and national parliamentarians to heighten up their oversight roles and ensure that there are programs that are put in place post-COVID, like economic stimulus packages. Those should target youths, women, and girls so that they can access those funds to open their small businesses and small companies. So that has been one area of intervention by PAP to make sure that job losses and income losses are mitigated as the enterprises start to reopen, especially small businesses and family businesses run by the youth. That is what PAP has been doing. The other line of intervention or area of intervention is in the socio-economic sectors, where PAP has been in the forefront to mitigate the impact of COVID on women, young people, and young girls, and also the people living with disabilities to the extent that they are affected by COVID-19. You may also recall that during this COVID pandemic, a lot has happened in the migration sector. And most of the people who are migrating are the youths. They have been caught up stranded during the lockdown and during COVID. Some are returnees, some are in transit. So PAP is urged all governments to make sure that they do not violate the freedom of the youth to movement, but as well as observing WHO rules on the response on COVID and also mitigation on COVID. So in the migration sector, PAP has played a very important role to minimize the disruption of migration and the impact of youths as they try to leave their countries or return back to their original countries as returnees. The other area where PAP is playing a major role is to make sure that all the conventions and protocols that impact on youth have to be ratified and domesticated, especially during this post-COVID period. There's a need to ratify all the conventions and protocols that affect the youth so that going forward, the youth can be protected and also enough room or space created for youth to play a part in the consummation of the Malawi Protocol, in which the youth play a pivotal role in the affairs of the Pan-African Parliament. I'm touched when you say that people know more about AU and the UN than the PAP, but I'm sure this is the beginning of that process to make sure that we unveil PAP to the people of Africa, especially the youth. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Mashakada. I think you've also given us more details in terms of what the Pan-African Parliament has been doing, as alluded to by Charity earlier, since the pandemic hit the continent. And I think I like the fact that you also said, Honorable Mashakada, that PAP is there to make sure things are done on behalf of the people, not so much to do the people, to do these things. And I think that's the mission that PAP has embarked on since February, actually. Make sure, like you said, that there's enough money to cater for healthcare, there's enough money to cater for education, because those two things are related to the youth. The youth need to be in good health. Youth need to continue with the studies when this whole situation settles. This is what the PAP is making sure that government do. So thank you very much for that. And what I'm going to do, because we're doing well with time, we are almost at the end. Just wanted to, before we close, just give back the floor to one or to the presenters. If there's anything else you wanted to just raise and get clarity on. So, but I think what the honorable members they've done is they've also indicated that some of these concerns, especially all the questions you've asked, have been taken into account, and they will form part of the next step in the engagement that we have with you, especially under the auspices of the PAP. Focus on youth, which is the main organ of the Pan-African Parliament dealing with youth issues. So, Brenda, Charity on B, I just wanted to check, and Abdallah, if there's anything else you wanted to raise. Brenda, I see your hand.
Thank you. I think it's just a concern that has been brought forth here. It's just a question of the tools that are needed to move the way forward, because as we have seen that as the youth, we're ready to actually help. So in as much as they're going to discuss, I think it would be okay to tell them that we are here, to let them not forget us, that we're here to actually, help them with moving the way forward. And also when it comes to providing tools such as mentorship and, civic education. Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like Jeffrey has disappeared for a moment. Charity, you can go ahead. Charity, I think you had a comment to make. We're listening to you.
Okay, I was finding it hard hearing you. One final thing I would want to say is that we're grateful that the Pan-African Parliament has opened its doors to engage with the youth. I believe that this is the time where our stories need to be told, and the youth have to rise and stand in our truth. It is one thing to say that we are pleading with government, sure that systems are put in place and then a lot of SMEs are being supported. It is one thing to do that. And then it is another thing to ensure that all of them are being implemented to the fullest. We've seen and we've heard stories that things, good initiatives start on paper, but as somewhere along the line, they end up on the shelves. And this is some of the things that has really withdrawn a lot of the youth from full participation when it comes to implementation of policies and projects by governments and head of states. This COVID-19, be it as we like it or not, it has come to stay. And so it has really shined a lot of light on the loopholes that already existed, but it has only intensified the efforts that need to be put in place. So I am grateful that the Pan-African Parliament has already taken giant steps in addressing and issues that has confronted the youth, issues of business, financial assistance, and also ensuring that a lot of the youth are being protected at this time. We would only pray that it doesn't end on the papers, it doesn't end on the shelves, that these steps that the Pan-African Parliament has taken actually are implemented at the high echelons of power. Because we can only sit at the bottom and hope that we'll do all the talks, but if the talks are not being walked, then that the challenge will continue to persist. And so and we're just grateful that this opportunity has come for us youth to voice our opinions out, and the Pan-African Parliament is ready and willing to listen to us. It shouldn't just be a talk shop. It should be something that we will see that it is being executed, and it's executed with the involvement of the youth. We should not forget that. It should be executed with the involvement of the youth so that together we'll serve a greater good to the continent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Charity. Tanvi, are you all good?
Yes,
yeah,
I'm
just one last word, and then we yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated the feedback that we got from the members of parliament as well. I think it was really nice to hear that they have been listening and taking notes and just, trying to engage with us in a way. And just to touch on what Brenda and Charity said, I would really hope that this doesn't just stop here, as this is a great initiative. So we do hope that it's taken forward, but also not that it just stops with us as well. I think I can see from the chat of this Zoom call that there are so many people eager to help, so many people just asking for, an opportunity, an avenue to do something. And sometimes I think these people need more support from the institution themselves. And I don't think it's enough to just tell them to go and do it on their own in their country, because the whole point of having an institution like this is to just also allow these people to do certain things and also provide them with support. And yes, they can do something on their own, and I'm sure they are, as I can see from the chat group. But I think some support and just guidance, and like Brenda brought up, maybe mentorship, just a lot of different ideas, which once again, if the platforms are there, the Facebook groups, the Twitter, all these accounts that you're already using to gain access, as you have advertised this, for example, you just use these same platforms to reach out and provide opportunities to others through mentorship programs, maybe through internships, and so on and on. So thank you for listening to our contributions and just promising that you will also move forward doing more.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanvi. This is all noted. And that's also what I wanted to say is that those who are watching the chat, we are seeing your questions, we are seeing your contributions. They are all taken into account, and together we will put this in our report. So, Honorable Youssef Mohammed from Libya is a deputy chairperson of the Pan-African Parliament Caucus on Youth. He had some technical challenges earlier, but he has been able to join us at the stage. So this is an engagement, like I said, is under our youth caucus. So I would like to give him the floor to say something based on what we've discussed, and he will obviously tell us more about the youth focus and what we can do together. Honorable, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for giving me the floor, and also to thank all the persons who are sharing with this meeting. And I'm also to say that I'm so sorry that I'm coming too late because I'm facing some problem with my internet connection with the place where I'm sitting in Libya. So my name is Yusuf Muhammad. I'm from Libya. I'm the vice president of the Youth Caucus in the Pan-African Parliament. Really, because I'm the last one who's speaking, I will not talk so much. So I want to thank all of you, and I'm very interested that I'm listening to your points regarding to the youth, and I also to support you that making that meeting as much as you can to support the youth to engagement them, to participate them with the continentals organizations, that the youth will be a part of that African organizations. The thing that we are missing, that we don't find the African youth, they are participate with all the African organizations. Really, I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Jeffrey. I want to thank also the PAP to manage this meeting, and I'm looking forward that I will be a part of the other such meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And I think with those words, we coming to the end of this engagement. And I like the fact that for some reason we are really doing good time. We are going to 5, and this is actually I can't even believe that because we've been engaging for some time. So thank you very much to all the panelists today. Thank you very much to everyone that joined us today for this engagement, even those who didn't have the opportunity to come in front of the camera and say something. We are still seeing your contribution. Thank you very much for that. To close, I would like to call on the acting clerk of the Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Gali Massa Aru. Mr. Gali, hello, Mr. Gali?
Oui.
Yes, so.
Oui, bonjour.
I'm the acting clerk to close the meeting. Thank you.
Merci Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for giving me the floor. I would like to firstly thank you for the excellent manner you have moderated this meeting right from the beginning to the end. I would like to laud the presentation made by Honorable Chief at the beginning of the meeting, as well as the interventions of various parliamentarians. I keenly listened to the presentations made by our young representatives that were brilliant, and they really raised important questions and gave us ideas on activities that we could hold with them. I thank them for sparing their time to be with us for this webinar, which for me has fulfilled its objectives. The objectives for this meeting were to virtually exchange on a number of themes that touch on youth, and they brilliantly made these presentations. I would like to tell them that this small group, together with Pan-African parliamentarians, would be a start of activities on COVID-19, as well as other themes that are of interest to young people. We count on you to continue with discussions on the various themes in order to enable us to come up with concrete solutions to some of the problems you have raised. We also count on you to intervene in your respective countries at various levels to ensure that the objectives of the Pan-African Parliament that focus on young people are achieved. I said that this group is a foundation that we can lean on, and we will not hesitate to invite them for another meeting to benefit from their rich contributions. I'd like to sincerely thank you. I believe that we have attained our objectives, we've attained our goals, and I hope that you will be ready to join us for further meetings. Together, we can move things forward, and with the commitment that I've felt through your various interventions, I'm sure that you will fully support the Pan-African Parliament. Once again, I thank you most sincerely, my dear brothers and sisters, for your contributions. I would like to thank the interpreters and Honorable Mashakada specifically, who dedicated his time to respond to the concerns raised by our young representatives, as well as the other honorable parliamentarians. And all of you find my gratitude. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for putting all the logistics together for organizing this meeting, and Jeffrey for your excellent moderation. Thank you once again. Thank you all.
Monsieur Acting Clerk.
Thank you, Acting Clerk.
I cannot come in between. Please, the video of this is on our YouTube, on our Facebook, on our Twitter. You'll find it there. And then, yes, we'll continue this engagement. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone, to honorable members, and to everyone. Bye.
Merci.
Jeff. Yes, if you can just leave us on for about 3 minutes so that we can be able to exchange contacts.
Oh yeah,
yes.
We'll do that. It's fine.
I wanted to do same, but I realized that when he said thank you very much, I was like, okay.
No, thank you, because we'll do that for the honorable members who need to go. So yeah, you have the platform. You can exchange your.